Hello everyone. Right now you're about to hear a short recap of the movie The Baker. A man nicknamed Popeye wakes up from yet another nightmare. Time to head to the kitchen and start kneading dough. Popeye owns a small bakery and does all the work himself. Meanwhile, at the airport, his son Peter is waiting for a client, but the plane is delayed. Peter buys a children's unicorn keychain and dozes off in the parking lot. Suddenly, a brutal massacre unfolds right before his eyes. Masked thugs attack some long-haired guy, hacking at him with axes and stabbing him with knives. But after a long fight, he's the only one left standing. The last gangster manages to wound him one more time before getting his throat slit. The fighter takes a few steps and collapses dead on the ground. Apparently, all of this happened because of the bag he was carrying. Peter calls emergency services, but then hangs up, deciding he might be able to make a fortune instead. The next morning, Peter storms into a classroom and takes his mute daughter out of school. That same red bag is lying on the back seat of his car. Delphi absolutely loves everything related to unicorns, so she steals unicorn nail polish and paints her father's nails. The rest of the day they spend together. For the baker, the day starts as usual, nightmares and dough. But then his son suddenly shows up, someone he hasn't seen in many years, and introduces him to a granddaughter he's seeing for the very first time in his life. Peter lies to his father, claiming his business is finally taking off and that he'll soon have plenty of money. He plans to leave Delphi with her grandfather while he quickly handles some eating. As a protest, the girl runs out of the bakery and locks herself inside the car. Popeye isn't exactly thrilled either. Peter asks his father to help him just this once, promising that afterward the old man will never hear from them again. He reassures his daughter that their lives are about to change for the better. The girl steals a loaf of bread and starts tearing off the crust to eat the soft inside. The baker nearly kills himself tripping over her. Delphi keeps sneaking around the bakery, sticking her nose everywhere. She finds a little mouse trapped in a mousetrap and sets it free. At the first opportunity, the girl steals cash from the register. Popeye can't leave his granddaughter alone, so he takes her along on deliveries. She insists that the old man wear his seatbelt. That night, Delphi sees her grandfather suffering from PTSD. Meanwhile, Peter returns home and finds the dangerous gangster Vic waiting for him, along with one of his henchmen, who's wearing a plastic bag over himself so he won't get dirty. Vic opens the bag and discovers children's belongings instead of the product he expected. Sneaky little Delphi had already rummaged through everything. Peter is brutally beaten. He promises he'll bring back the contents of the bag, but before leaving, he calls his father and tells him what Delphi likes and dislikes. Then Popeye hears a gunshot. The girl brought over her backpack and dumped a pile of drug packets onto the table. The baker realized it was time to get out of there. He stuffed all the packets into loaves of bread and drove off in his bread truck. Vic got chewed out by his boss. The gangster had to find the girl no matter what, otherwise he wouldn't stay alive for very long. Popeye arrived at his son's house and searched every room. Peter was nowhere to be found. The entire house had been turned upside down. The criminals had obviously been searching for the drugs. Only then did Popeye learn that his daughter-in-law, Delphi's mother, had died in a car accident 2 years earlier. The old man tried to leave his granddaughter with a neighbor, but the woman refused since Delphi was family. Popeye went to the police station to report his son missing. The problem was, he barely knew anything about him. He couldn't even remember Peter's birthday. The only thing Popeye knew for sure was that a .38 caliber pistol had been used. He identified it by the sound. The man studied Peter's notebook and discovered that the last place he had visited was the airport parking lot. Meanwhile, the little girl casually stole a few more dollars. Chalk outlines of the dead bodies still remained in the airport parking lot. The corpses themselves were already at the coroner's office. The baker examined the bodies and studied their wounds. At least Peter wasn't among the dead. After that, Popeye started visiting various shady places. Eventually, he ended up in a filthy den where drug addicts hung out and found a familiar packet there. He offered another one in exchange for information. The junkie explained that it was a new, powerful drug, but he refused to talk about a dealer nicknamed Milky. In exchange for another dose, the addict finally revealed where Milky could be found. Two thugs started following the baker. They knocked the old man onto the asphalt and demanded he share some of the pink drugs with them. Big mistake letting the baker get back on his feet. Within seconds, he broke the limbs of both addicts. Without a credit card, the hotel refused to check the grandfather and granddaughter into a room. Luckily, Delphi had previously stolen someone else's credit card. Inside the room, the girl discovered where her grandfather had hidden the valuable baked goods. Afterward, she showed concern by placing ice on his wound. Vic paid a visit to the Aryans who had attacked his man at the airport and immediately shot an 18-year-old guy dead. The victim's friend told him about an old man who called himself the Baker. Vic rewarded the guy with a bullet to the stomach. To the remaining gang members, he promised a reward of 10 grand if they found the Baker. After that, he burned down their drug lab. Meanwhile, the addicts beaten up by Popeye were brought into the police station. Detective Whitaker became interested because, according to their description, the man who beat them up was the same guy she had recently spoken with. It turned out that information about this Baker was somehow classified. Meanwhile, Popeye tailed Milky and followed him all the way to a motel. The old man lured the dealer outside and pressed a knife to his throat. Then he started ripping out his piercings to find out where his son was. Meanwhile, some locals started causing trouble near the truck. Delphi got scared and ran away. Milky explained that Peter had planned to sell him the drugs and that he needed to consult with his boss, Cirque. Suddenly, Delphi came running over. Milky took advantage of the distraction and smashed Popeye with a bong, injuring him. The old man knocked him out and returned to the car with his granddaughter. The grandfather took some pills and calmed himself down. Then he and Delphi went for a walk through the market. When the girl spotted a shiny trinket, she naturally tried to steal it, but Popeye grabbed her hand and demanded that she never do that again. Vic also dreams about all the people he has killed. His boss came to visit him at home. The crime lord believed Vic was falling apart and could no longer be trusted. Merchant decided to give Vic one more chance. That evening, Popeye read his granddaughter a bedtime story, and once she fell asleep, he headed to a nightclub. He needed to track down Cirque. Cirque turned out to be a huge, creepy brute. Popeye deliberately bumped into him. The gangster spilled his drink on himself and went to the restroom to clean up. There, the old man pretended to be a bathroom attendant, helped Cirque freshen up, and then suddenly attack him. During the fight, Cirque pulled out a gun, but Popeye easily disarmed him and explained that he was searching for his son. Cirque knocked the pistol away and started beating the Baker senseless. Both men ended up wounded. Then the gangster suddenly admitted that Popeye's son was dead and that he had helped bury the body. Popeye smashed the brute in the face several times and finally cracked his skull against a urinal. Delphi woke up when her grandfather returned home. Unfortunately, the chances that her father was still alive were very slim. They would head home tomorrow. Popeye had been caught on the nightclub's security cameras. However, Benin lied to his partner, claiming the man's face couldn't be identified in any of the footage. At the first opportunity, the dirty cops secretly photographed the screen and sent the image to Vic. The next morning, Popeye told his granddaughter that she had been named after her grandmother, his wife. It was time for them to go home. Sadly, all the local scum already knew what he looked like. One woman immediately called Vic as soon as she spotted the Baker. The thugs quickly stormed the hotel and bribed the manager to find out which room the old man was staying in. At that very moment, Delphi was pulling the bread out of its hiding place when the gangsters burst into the room. The girl managed to hide at the very last second. The criminals sat down and started waiting. One of them noticed the loaf of bread lying on the table but got distracted a moment later. Delphi grabbed the loaf and ran out of the hotel, hiding inside the truck. Popeye rushed to rescue her. He knocked out the first thug with just a couple of punches. The second one took much longer to deal with. The gangster emptied an entire magazine from his pistol, but not a single bullet hit the target. The long fight among the baked goods ended with the criminal getting beaten to death with a rolling pin. Then, using the rolling pin, he broke the thug's neck. The truck had to be destroyed afterward. Unfortunately, the baker himself was badly hurt as well. He had suffered a stab wound. At a store, the old man grabbed some fishing line and a fishhook. He sat down in the back room to stitch himself up, but passed out. Delphi couldn't wake him, so she ran off to find help from other adults. However, the mute girl realized it would be faster to trigger the fire alarm. The old man was rushed to the hospital in critical condition. Detectives were immediately informed about a wounded man who matched the suspect's description. Vic also received a message with the hospital's address. Delphi was overjoyed when her grandfather finally woke up. Popeye asked his granddaughter to go buy something to eat. At that same moment, the detective arrived at the hospital. In the hallway, the girl spotted gangsters and realized they had come for them. A bearded thug asked the girl to show him where the baker was staying. Delphi tricked the criminal and led him into the wrong hospital room. The other two gangsters guessed the correct room, but the baker had seemingly vanished. In reality, he was hiding under the bed and attacked the intruders by surprise. As usual, the first thug went down quickly, but the one with dreadlocks put up a serious fight. Popeye's tough skull saved him again. He used defibrillator paddles like brass knuckles and beat his opponent senseless with them. To make sure the thug stopped moving, He stabbed a needle into his neck. The grandfather and granddaughter headed for the elevator. Whitaker arrived only a couple of minutes too late. The detective saw a photo from the nightclub on one gangster's phone and immediately understood everything. Her partner reached for his gun, but Whitaker shot first and sent the dirty cop to the afterlife. Meanwhile, Delphi secretly pocketed the other phone. Pretending to be the gangster, she texted Vic that they had successfully recovered the merchandise. They arranged to meet him by the waterfront. The gangster walked right into the trap and soon felt the barrel of a gun pressed against his neck. Popeye took away his weapon and recognized it as the same pistol used to kill his son. The old man demanded that Vic show him where Peter's grave was. Vic obeyed and led the baker into the woods. The grave was shallow. The man recognized his son's hand. His fingernails were painted with children's nail polish. The baker ordered Vic to get on his knees. The gangster admitted that while dying, Peter wasn't thinking about himself. He was thinking about his daughter. It seemed that Vic himself was no longer afraid to die, but suddenly Popeye lowered the gun. Instead, he began drowning the gangster in a muddy puddle, only stopping when he imagined little Peter standing before him. In reality, it was Delphi. The baker didn't want to kill a man in front of her. Hugging his granddaughter, he quietly said that now it was okay to cry. The baker then went to visit the boss at his hideout. It turned out that the two men already knew each other. The baker hadn't come empty-handed. He brought stale bread filled with the pink packets hidden inside. The crime boss had lost his men, and Popeye had lost his son. That made them even. The gangster let the baker go, and he returned to his granddaughter. Just like her grandfather, Delphi had grown to love Iggy Pop.